guys. Welcome back to The Curious Experience. I have Haniff here with me. He is the founder and CEO of MATCH. So I really appreciate you taking the time here. Just to kind of reiterate what we do here on The Curious Experience, I really try to dig into tech founders' journey, understand, what they built, why they built it, what inspired them to do it. So I'm really excited to learn more about MATCH. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And congrats on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. I actually found out about MATCH when I went to a tech conference that I learned about through my podcast. It was called Edge for the New York Fashion Week. And I was just kind of like going around learning about the different companies there. And I saw MATCH and I was very intrigued by like the 3D scan that they had there. And I just started like asking so many questions to the woman there. She was like, I don't have all the answers.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, it was. We were glad to be part of that event. Some of these events you never know, but that one turned out to be pretty good for us. So very excited to be here.
Yeah, definitely. When I did hear about MATCH and when I was talking to her, it was an interesting product because I hadn't really thought of anything like that in terms of a solution. But it seemed like it was very clear and is very directed, and it already had multiple different industries that they were supporting with their products. So, I'd love to hear about the vision behind MATCH and how that kind of came to be.
Yeah. So it was really an evolution, to be honest with you. So my background is I went to school at Williams College. I graduated with a math and psychology double major, and then I worked on Wall Street for about 3 years as an investment banker, and then I worked in private equity. And the firm that I was at, large private equity firm, invests in all sort of retail companies. So think of like Floor and Decor and restaurants, and then Boot Barn, which is a Western retailer. And whilst I was there, I started to look at and investigate to invest in a lot of companies in the discount retail space. So think of like TJ Maxx, but like further down in terms of the value chain. And I started to learn a lot about returns and reverse logistics. And these companies that we were looking to invest in, they took returns from like Walmart and Target, and then they sold those clothes back for cents on the dollar. So it was there that I started to see the problem firsthand. I spent about 1.5 to 2 years looking at a variety of different retailers that were handling returns. And I studied it really from a top-down perspective, McKinsey reports, Deloitte reports, like almost like a consultant. And then whilst I was doing the problem from an analytical perspective, my mom got clothes as a present from my cousin. And of course, none of them fit. And she asked me to return them. And whilst I was returning them, I missed a very important meeting due to traffic. And so I had now a personal vendetta against this problem and a business vendetta against it because I was studying it so much. And so I decided that, and I couldn't stop thinking about the problem. I thought about different ways to solve it. It felt so broken. Felt so obvious to me that why does this still exist as an issue? And I started to investigate it. I reached out to a professor at Cornell. I told her my idea. I told her that I thought 3D technology was the only way to solve it because fit is a 3D problem. And really started to build a company from there. I went up to Ithaca. I spent a couple weeks there, and then a couple more weeks. That's where I met our chief data scientist, and really the company has evolved ever since that initial kind of problem that I was investigating.
Definitely in the retail space. That's why like those companies exist, like the TJ Maxx's and the Marshalls. Like, it makes sense. I didn't really think about it from that perspective, but like, there are probably a lot of returns and a lot of clothing items that, people don't want anymore because they don't fit them. And then what are retailers supposed to do at that point? So they sell it to different companies. But if you could kind of like find a way to solve that initial problem, it could be really helpful on the consumer's end. So, trying to tackle that seems like a big feat. Is, you landed on 3D technology, but did you start there? Like, how did you kind of like, start to refine, understanding what could be helpful in this industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. So fashion is super wasteful. It's like the second most wasteful industry out there. It's more polluted, it leads to more pollution than in greenhouse gas emissions than international shipping, and transportation overall. And it is, about 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from fashion. So the data is pretty clear that something is broken. And I started to investigate it more from a user experience perspective, which is okay, there are $55 billion of online returns. It's a huge problem. Retailers are struggling with this. It impacts online sales, but let's look at it from the basic consumer lens. And when I started to do that, I realized that, like, holy crap, like it is difficult for an average person to look at a computer screen and to assess how a garment may drape on them, look on them, and fit them, because it's inherently a 3D problem. But if I were to sort of imagine a world where I could see that garment in front of me, almost in AR, or using those tools, I would probably get it right more times than not. And so I started to investigate a lot of the solutions on the market, TrueFit and some of the surveys, and they all felt okay. Like they all felt like good enough, to kind of get there on helping consumers. But then when I started to talk to consumers, I just realized that a lot of them hated those tools. They didn't think they were accurate. A lot of them didn't even know the name of the tools, so there was no brand equity in the ecosystem. And I felt that was just ripe for disruption. I think it was a wrong solution in terms of it, using 2D methodologies. And then B, I just felt as if they did not a great job, and therefore felt as if we could come in and build something that would be better. And so that's really what led us to begin, building a path to utilizing this technology. And then the other thing is that I learned about Moore's Law. So Moore's Law is this theory in technology that every year technology gets better and it gets cheaper at a compounding rate. And so I started to investigate a lot of the sensors in our iPhones, and saw that Apple and Google, LG, Samsung were investing a ton of money into spatial computing, and it will all come down into a smaller form factor. It wasn't a matter of if, it was going to be when we all were walking around with powerful devices in our pocket that would enable a Macy's or a Nordstrom to tap into that technology to give you a much better shopping experience. And we wanted to be the glue, or the application that made that all possible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you were talking, I was thinking of existing technologies right now, like, with the AR, that's what I think of. Like when you can see how, what's it called, furniture item will look in your house. It's all using that spatial technology. But also there are a lot of, fashion tech companies right now that are trying to do the, virtual try on, which does seem to be a little bit different because it kind of gives you an idea of how it looks on you, but not how it's going to fit on you, which I think is very interesting. You're trying to really fit the niche of understanding how something can lay on you. And there's so many different variables that come to mind in that. I remember when I was talking to you guys, and I was one of the people that were trying to part of the elite member program, when I was trying to help also, give you guys some data to work with. I was explaining how certain things fit differently on me based off of like what I have under on, and these are all different impacts and or different reasons that things would fit differently. So in this research project, do you kind of see it, or in this research, do you kind of see it as this is where the starting ground is, and you're just laying the foundation for the future of when you're able to kind of collect more information and understand how to leverage the, advanced technologies that are coming out?
Yeah, so we actually think the whole thing needs to just be burnt down. Like, to be honest with you, we think it's just like lazy and broken. And I know why it was built now that I'm in it, because it is a difficult problem. So they kind of just went with like, oh, let's just build some sizing charts. It will give people some directional knowledge on what they should wear. But it kind of is broken fundamentally. So what we mean by that is like you could take a tape measure, you could put like your waist or your chest or your hip measurements in it, and you can kind of feed it into some sizing chart. And you can come up even with the exact specifications that are in that sizing chart for that size. That doesn't mean it's going to fit you, right? You're a whole 3D human. So like, for example, like how, you could have 5 different people with the same exact measurements and 5 of them were different sizes because their shape is different. Their volume is different. They carry their tissue density differently. So it's inherently like a fundamental 3D problem. So we actually approach it kind of completely differently from bottoms up. We're like, let's just do away with the sizing charts and let's do away with these measurements. If they worked, we wouldn't see return rates going up, right? It's just kind of logical. So we actually came up with, and my chief data scientist, Dr. JP, he wrote a patent at Cornell where she basically was like, look, it's not really about how do I match myself to a garment based on the measurements. That's cool. That works. But it's like, if I have a database of other people and I know what fits those other people, like I know what's in their closet, I know what they like, I know what brands fit them better than other brands, I know what sizes fit them across other brands, and I have technology that can match me to the closest digital twin or can match me to the closest person with my body type. That would be powerful because then I'll be exposed to their closet. I know that I'm a 99% match. So whatever fits them should inherently fit me. And so with that, we created this sort of concept where, hey, look, it's not about matching you to the garments based on measurements. It's matching you to other people. And the larger the database that we have, the more closets we have, the more sizes we have, the higher the likelihood that we're able to find your match and give you a product that fits. And so really the last 3 or 4 years, we've really been on this journey to say, okay, can we test that idea with a few key retailers, number one? Then can we expand the technology that anyone can do it with any, as many devices as possible, number two? And then number three, can you bring it all together and create a cohesive concept, which is what you started to see and interact with, which is this closet idea that we're really, really proud of and excited to bring to market in, a few weeks.
Yeah. And, you touched on something that I think is very interesting. And I think in general, the industry is trying to lean into more, which is the community that you're trying to serve. And because the technology that you have is reliant on the data set, kind of building a community is probably a huge aspect to the success of the company, because you have to have a large data set. And the more data you have, like you said, it will serve the customers better. So, was that something that you kind of saw for the vision early on, knowing that like it would be reliant on, the community engagement aspect to the FitMatch as well?
So I believe the most powerful technologies and companies, away from FitMatch for now, the most powerful technologies and companies, the Ubers, the Airbnbs, they do something other than just the thing that they do. Like an Uber, they create a whole economy now of where people can now earn a living doing something else. Plus, by the way, they provide a convenient way to get from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. Airbnb created a whole other economy, right, and community of people who are now sharing their homes, interacting mm-hmm. with guests and other people. And by the way, they provide an amazing opportunity to stay in locations that are much better than hotels, that gets you closer to, that environment that you're staying in. And so the greatest companies that are generationally defining, in my opinion, tend to do much more than just the tech itself. The tech enables them to provide a community or provide a greater need. And essentially, that's what I think a FitMatch or mission is. We know that most Americans struggle with this problem. I think 60% of shoppers online bracket shop, which basically means they see the same garment and order 4 sizes and try on the 4 and then ship back the 3 that don't fit, which is just, besides just being terrible for the environment, it's just really crappy way to shop.
Hmm.
Think about it like if you were to buy a sandwich and from DoorDash or whatever, and you have to buy four and you
Yeah.
taste each one, and then you're like, okay, I don't like this one, so I'm gonna send it back. Like it's just crappy. So we know that most people struggle with this. So how can we then build a concept similar to our Airbnb, similar to Uber, that is generationally defining? That's just not only about the technology, but it's about the community. It's about sharing. Anytime you can do that, you have this 1+1=3 synergy that is really powerful. And it creates a data moat that's hard to replicate. It's hard as hell to build because the technology has to be right.
Yeah.
You have to have enough funding. There are several things that have to come together for it to work.
Yeah.
But once you can do it, it can be really, really special. And I think that's what we're trying to do with FitMatch, is that we're trying to not only just create the technology, but create the data moat, the movement, the community around it that enables us to continue serving that community.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you kind of know that early on when you had this vision, or was it more centered towards the technology, and then you started to see more of, what the market would need for this technology to be emerging, since it is so new? Nobody probably even knows that this technology exists and it requires a movement like that. Was that something you anticipated?
Yeah, I always thought, I listen to a lot of just different founders. That's one of the things that I do habitually. It's just like, and I realize that the greatest founders, you talk to them and it's never really about, oh yeah, we do this with our algorithms or we do this. It's always about a bigger vision, a bigger community. It almost like they mask their technology inside a much higher missionary goal. So I knew that the path to success was kind of a greater mission. But really, when we started to really build out FitMatch, what we realized a few things. One is that the technology from a consumer perspective was always better when consumers could have a broad assortment versus a narrow assortment. So what I mean by that is it was always better when the shopper who does this technology could use it for 25, 30, 50 brands versus just one solo brand or one solo garment category. Because, that's where we started. She always said, I would look to use this for sports bras and bras, but I also want to use it for denim or swim. And so we knew that the path to get to success was one where we had to go pretty broad. So we used that in how we built this out as well. And we realized that the only way to really get this done successfully is that if you build it in a way where it can talk to many brands at the same time, many garment categories at the same time, so that she has that diversity and that assortment that will make it worthwhile. And so these are things that honestly I wish I knew when we started. You kind of have to work really hard at the problem and obsess about it every day. But I think we're on the right path. And I also think the environment today, given some of the disruption that's happening in retail and some of the tariffs, and there's going to be a lot of, I think, movement now that will create the space and the avenue for new concepts to exist versus the traditional wholesale models and so forth. And I think that we will be one.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, it's a new technology, so it does require some education to the market or to the consumers of what is available. Did you kind of have any issues trying to understand that, not only are you building a startup that requires people to build into the data set, but also they have to learn that this technology exists? Was the education aspect something too that you were trying to look to understand?
Yeah, the hardest part about consumer enterprise and consumer SaaS is that it's not just like selling some back-end analytics tool that, Macy's develops and never sees the lights of, day, and their warehouse team is using it or their tech design team is using it. And all you have to do is focus on those 50 people in that organization. When you're doing consumer tech, you have to do that because you have to convince them to deploy the tech, especially if it's B2B to C like us. Then you have to build the awareness and you have to build a consumer pull. And so we kind of went reverse. We went very B2B first. We signed our first initial partnerships with, Rihanna's brand, Savage X Fenty, and Athletics and some others. And we really tried to build a technology for them first. And then we realized, and I think it was natural evolution, that, okay, at some point, as I said before, the consumer wants many brands at the same time, not just one brand. We're going to have to start talking to that consumer. Mm-hmm. So around 23 is when we really started to say, okay, let's now lean into that voice. Let's lean into what she wants. Let's listen to her more. And that's really what enabled us to come up with this idea that if you can connect people to other people, and that person who you're connecting them to is now giving them not just a size, hey, I'm a size this at this brand, or I'm a size this at this brand, but also, hey, this brand is a better fit for my body type than this brand. Mm-hmm. So if you're like me and you have the same body shape like me, you should want to buy that brand, right? And that's when we start to uncover these little nuggets that is really formulating what we built today. That said, the technology had to evolve as well. So we had to ensure that we could get this to as many people as possible. It had to be private. We had to build trust. So a lot has gone into kind of getting it to where it is today. But I would argue that it's been an evolution. And what we've tried to do at every step is listen to the consumer or the customer, the brand or the shopper. And I think that's kind of what has led us to be kind of where we are.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you speak to the B2B aspect to it. Like that was the first iteration of giving the product to was for businesses. Was that approach intentional? Like we're going to go to businesses first, and then kind of branch out from there.
Yeah, super intentional. The number one thing as a founder, a startup, is you have to be super intentional. Even if you get it wrong, intentionality is key, and intentionality brings focus. And so even though sometimes it may seem pretty broad and haphazard, there's a method to the madness. You have to be really, really focused, I think, on articulating the method. So we actually, whereas most companies, some other technologies in this space started online, and that's where they went first. We went to stores first because we wanted to master the experience in store in a smaller sort of fitting room environment where we could iterate a lot versus putting ourselves out there crashing and burning. And I remember a lot of investors were like, oh, you need to go online. And it just made our seed round harder, made our Series A harder, right? But I think intentionally was the right thing. Another thing that we intentionally did is we said, we're going to start on iOS only. We're still iOS today, right? We don't do Android. Why? Because there's some privacy issues with not using LiDAR. There's other things that make it not ideal. The other thing we did intentionally is that we didn't go after every product category. Didn't go after bridal dresses. Didn't start with menswear. Didn't do shirts. And because we wanted to focus on the product categories that were the hardest to fit, because we felt the brands and the consumers would gravitate towards the technology in those categories. So yeah, I think it was a very intentional choice, to grow and scale in the manner that we have. It's been really challenging at times, but it's also been very rewarding because that intentionality is one of the reasons why we're here today.
And in terms of growth and scaling, do you see that mostly from being able to, or do you see it in the future being through consumers finding out about FitMatch through the brand relationships or through the direct community that you've built?
Yeah, I think of this as very similar to a PayPal or a Affirm or a Klarna or one of the buy now, pay later, like a fintech play, in that you find out about PayPal through the brands because you see it littered on JetBlue's side and Starbucks side and whatever. But then you also find out about PayPal because your friend says, hey, I want to send you some money. And you're like, okay. And you're like, okay, I'll use the PayPal app. Or as a consumer, you now use PayPal to buy things from the PayPal app first. And same thing with some of the buy now, pay later companies. It's the same way I think about FitMatch. It's both. I don't know the exact split in the future, but my guess is that people will start their journey at FitMatch and therefore will grow through the community, bringing people in. And we'll also grow through the brand partnerships that we have that will bring awareness and visibility to the concept. And I think the best companies do both very well, and they use both to like feed off each other. So for example, let's say you have a brand, you could work with that brand's brand ambassador to bring more people to your technology and your platform. And so it's a win-win on both sides.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, speaking of building on that, since you are kind of like building a enterprise almost because you are working with a lot of different industries, the wellness industry, the sports science industry, what is the core technology there that those industries are really able to leverage?
So we have several kind of layers to what makes us special. Just generally speaking, we handle the human body very well. So there's a lot of complexity with dealing with a human body, right? Especially if you're talking about scale and user experience. How do you get somebody to scan? You could have the best technology in the world, like people don't listen to instructions as much as you would hope. You also have to remember that people are not as patient as you may hope. And so you have to build technology around the human, and that has ramifications as well as how you build a product. But that's number one. Number two is that there is a patent that we have that is really special in how we can compare you to a digital twin of you, or you to somebody in New York or California who may be, a body type that's similar to yours. So that's all in-house. That's proprietary. That's patented with the USPTO. There's a special sauce on how we do that. That's very, very hard. And I think the third piece is that the synergies across industries really make this special. So I could see this future where this body data that's stored within the FitMatch ecosystem, if you came in as a shopper, you can now use it for tracking your shape over time. You could use it for different analytics on the wellness side. Or if you came in from one of our wellness partners, you can now say, okay, yeah, but I want to know what to buy. I want to know what to shop. And I can leverage a FitMatch API for that as well. I do think there's a synergistic play where this becomes the house of this valuable body data.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it will also lead to a data moat in the future as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. You spoke on, being able to see the human body and, speak to that user experience when they're trying to understand it. And then also that data set that will be available for these companies for them to leverage. In terms of the sports science, just out of a curiosity standpoint, are they able to kind of like leverage that for performance reasons, or more of the fit of what they're wearing for performance? Is that kind of the avenue you guys are going down?
Yeah, no, it's performance reasons. Whole bunch of different extractions there. So we can pull anthropometric information, so a lot of body circumferences and lengths and asymmetries as well. So we can compare people's right side to their left side. Which actually leads to a lot of injuries in athletes who are younger and they don't know, and then they pick up an injury. So we can detect those things, swelling. We can also use the digital twin technology. Let's say you're a team and you're a scout and you're trying to assess a player versus 10 or 15 other players. We can use the technology to stack up that player where that player fits within sort of a 3D paradigm. And more. And so we actually see this as an open market in terms of the technology that exists. There's a lot of motion technology, like how a player cuts or how fast they run or how high they jump, but not a lot of technology around the stationary body morphology of athletes. And the data that's out there is kind of outdated. So we see a lot of teams, a lot of scouts, a lot of coaches requesting easy ways to collect this data so that they can make more probabilistic decisions based on the analytics that are produced.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm
But
starting to see it from that startup perspective. Like it's kind of a long game and trying to establish relationships in these different industries. And over time, those relationships will be able to, go back into the business in terms of understanding the continued big database that you're going to be able to use or companies will be able to leverage, as well as the community that you guys are doing. So that makes a lot of sense from that standpoint. I wanted to ask when you were first going into this and, was there a big point where you kind of had to pivot at any point, where you kind of had to redefine the vision a bit? It seems like you have a lot of clarity now, but was there kind of a point where you had to really realign everything?
uh, honestly, I think I pivot, probably every day. There's some big pivot moments. I mean, when we really just started with the technology, I had this grand idea that custom was an area that could leverage this pretty nicely, and the mass market was something that was, it's like too messy. It's da da da, and you know, we kind of started in that realm. And what I realized very quickly is you never want to build a startup that's a derivative. I call it kind of the derivative problem, where you could have all the best technology on the front end to do custom. You're highly dependent on a back end infrastructure that can support made to measure at scale or made to order at scale. And that's simply that no matter how much progress has been made in that space, that doesn't exist today. And it's gonna cost billions and billions of dollars for it to get there. So that was quick in our journey. We kind of pivoted very quickly away from that. We started to realize that, hey, this can work for mass at scale. Um, and then we say no a lot. So as I said earlier, like, people have approached us about footwear, about other things that we continually say no to. We find that the market is big enough that we can be narrowly focused at the same time, have a wide addressable market. Um, so yeah, but you have to be open to pivoting. Your vision can stay very stable, but how you get there, you have to be very flexible with, that markets may change and the idea may evolve. And I think that's been the approach that we've taken.
Can you speak to more of the future that you see for the fashion tech industry? Is it more in that personalization? Is it more of, clean data for companies to utilize?
Yeah, I think it's I was talking to a client today and he just was like, don't overcomplicate it. Just give me the simple stuff. And the thing I always just come back to when I started the company is you save people time, you save people money,
Mhm.
and can you make it super efficient? Like if you do those things well, the rest will work itself out, right? And the greatest companies, I think, they stick to those values and whatever they build. And so for us, we want to create a future where buying that pair of jeans or trying to find it takes you 3 seconds. The algorithm knows your body type. It has access to as many garments from as many brands as possible. And it's as simple as you just saying, I'm going to a wedding, or I'm going to a function, and I want a blue pair of jeans. And in 3 seconds, it just gives you that option. Just like how ChatGPT does search, just like how most of the AI tools just give you the answer. You don't have to go through all these different filters and these different items. That's the future that we see. We see that we can circumvent almost and the entire complexity of how shopping works today, where you have to go to a site, you have to filter whether you're male or female, then you have to filter by the garment category, then you have to filter by brand and price point and this and that. And then eventually it shows you something that may be for you. And then you have to try and figure out your size. We've actually done a side by side comparison on this concept. We call it Fit AI. And we see that it could take somebody 5, 6, 7 minutes kind of get to the same answer we can give in 3 seconds. And I think if we actually deliver on that promise, there's a lot of good things that will come on the other side of that. And so that's the future that we're trying to build is like, can we get people the thing that they want as quickly as possible in an accurate way? And with AI and some of the underlying fundamental tools that we have, we think that future is nearer than people think.
And having that vision, would you say that's kind of the key to, maybe other founders who are trying to build create some innovation in a space that, is just not defined yet? Is that something that you would, say is probably needed when you're trying to build something in a space that you're kind of defining as you go along?
Yeah, I mean, there's this concept called product market fit. You as you're building, you're going to hear this over and over. Are you building a product in search of a problem, or does the problem exist already, and you've built up a solution for that? And typically, when you have product market fit, you don't have to guess. It's just chaos. You're just trying to fulfill an order or ship an order or talk to that client and reject that client, just pure chaos. And so I do think that the one of the main reasons, or one of the majority of the reasons startups don't work, is that you never really get to product market fit. And so you really have to study the problem, right? That's what I would say to founders out there, is like, you have to obsess about your problem a lot, right? And people they jump to the solution, they jump to the technology they're creating or their idea, and then they miss the problem. And when you miss the problem, you miss the market opportunity. Because, right, you're building a solution, right, that is solving a problem. You're always trying to solve it with a painkiller, right? You're not trying to solve it with a vitamin, right? People don't like nice to haves. They buy things that they must have. And so I think that is the key. As long as you stay true to the problem and the vision of solving that problem, then the solution will come along, and it will be, a very easy thing to kind of wake up every day and build, versus, if you're trying to like create something because you want to be the next fill in the blank, that's a much harder thing to do.
And in trying to build a team in that space, is being able to like explain a vision that you're trying to solve, when you're trying to build a team and you're trying to explain something, particularly for like 3D mapping and things like that. I remember you said that you had reached out to someone from Cornell, I believe. In having those conversations, was it more of like a brainstorming session that happened at first, and then ideas came together, or did you kind of come in like, this is what it is and can you help me?
No, and look, I read something the other day that said this Mark Lohr, who is one of the most successful entrepreneurs, raised $3 billion. Just very successful companies, and he's like, my rejection rate from investors is 93%, and he's top 0.1% of entrepreneurs, and his rejection rate is 93%. And the reason I say that, you get told no a lot, a lot. And so you are therefore evolving your story a lot, because you will get, let's say 10 times, you get 10 no's. 7 of the no's maybe just random, like, oh yeah, not a fit for me, not a this, not a that, not right timing. But then there are 2 no's that come with a lot of good feedback. And you're like, I didn't think of the problem like that, or I didn't think of the solution like that, or maybe I should track that down. So you do have to be in this constant evolution frame of mind, and you have to be very open to it, and you can't take it personal, right? And that's what really helps on the journey. But yeah, it's just this ever evolving thing. And, once you read perspective like that, that's somebody who's, top 0.1% of the field can get a 93% rejection rate, it kind of puts things into perspective that it's not it's a game of numbers.
Yeah. It's a statistic game at that point, and you really kind of have to have the drive to continue to beat the odds that are coming towards you. And I think that's what I love about the entrepreneurial space, especially in the tech space. It's like it really shows you what you're made of. Like, are you going to continue to see how you can be better from that situation, or are you going to just give up after that. It's really up to you because there is a solution and there is someone that's going to figure it out. It's just a matter of like putting yourself out there enough times to kind of like see all the pieces come together. So, I think that's something that people can appreciate for a company that's trying to solve a problem is they're always going to continue to reiterate and continue to find more pain points and figure out the best way to help their consumers.
100%. It's a journey, and you hit the nail on the head. You have to bring people along with you each time, and so the hallmark of a great founder or entrepreneur is the ability to recruit not just team members, recruit investors, recruit partners, recruit people in your personal life that will always say, why didn't you go and work for X bank or X large company because it's safer? You always have to be recruiting and pulling people into the vision, and that's just part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we spoke a lot about, FitMatch in the program. How can people that are listening kind of like tune in and join the program, potentially help build that data set?
Yeah. So, great question. We are putting out a lot of updates on our side in terms of the recruitment and the joining the community. If you go to fitmatch.ai, there is a lot of information there on how you can join the community. Also on Instagram, fitmatch.ai, LinkedIn, fitmatch.ai. Also, a lot of us have individual profiles on LinkedIn and so forth. Feel free to, definitely reach out to us. And my LinkedIn is just, Haniff Brown. We're very excited to meet and talk and discuss further. And it's a pretty exciting project that I think a lot of people want to join. And by the way, it's also a way for people to earn as well. It's not just doing it as a hobby. There is an element of this where a very powerful element where we're actually sharing back with the community earnings that we get from the recommendations we provide back with those elite members. So we expect that people will be able to earn at least a few $100s a month and then really scale up from there and incentivize them to promote shopping in this way as well.
That's amazing. I mean, it gives people an opportunity to build the community, feel good about giving back to the community, continue to want to put more of their, where their fits on there. I've been tinkering with it. I've been like putting my, outfits on there, and I'm just seeing so many of the little nooks and crannies that our bodies have and how, helpful it would be if I could understand, how would this look like someone on me? So, I mean, that's amazing and very exciting.
Yeah, no, super exciting. And, we've been hearing a lot of positive feedback. We're just really trying to get it out there as quickly as possible in the full sense. We have our app on the App Store, but we're very excited about the upcoming launch. And as I said before, people can just reach out to us directly through those channels, and I'm excited to meet many of you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Haniff. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it as well.